We'll be going to Daniel 8, if you want to turn. Rosemary and I also got to go to Josh's graduation, and it was a very encouraging time together. I think some sort of star needs to be given to Kathy, who went with 3 little kids, and one of those was George. And actually, George did extremely well. He must have enjoyed that. Thought that was something fun. I would care if I asked for hands of anybody that's heard a lesson on Daniel 8 to believe that if there was a chance there would be one, and it'd be Vicki, but I doubt she's heard a lesson on Daniel 8 either. We generally go to the furnace, we go to the lion's den, and if we really want to stretch ourselves, we go to 4 and the humbling of Nebuchadnezzar, but we don't address the end of the book of Daniel. Now, it's been asked recently, and I think the answer is, why did God raise up prophets who preached at the same time? And I think there's a really good answer to that, because Jeremiah, Daniel, and Ezekiel were contemporary. But as you read through them, and we've slowly been reading through them, with the exception of Jeremiah, they preach differently, just as surely as we know that by listening to preaching today. We're going to find in Ezekiel that Ezekiel, much like our Jacob Wilson, is going to bring a handout to every sermon. And he's going to use an illustration that's extraordinarily interesting. Well, Jeremiah is the weeping prophet. Jeremiah is so upset by the people not responding that he struggles with his composure. Well, Daniel's the statesman. You remember we went through Daniel 1, and he ascended to a place where he is in the royal temple, the royal living place. And yet Daniel would not compromise an inch. Now think that one through, because there's the first lesson that's not necessarily a part of the plan. You remember? They wouldn't eat the king's dainties, chapter 1. They, being he, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And yet, they made it without compromising. In Daniel 6, the heathen encouraged enough that they got a rule passed that no one was to pray to another god. Daniel 6:10 says that Daniel, as was his practice, went to the window looking toward Jerusalem and prayed to his God. He wasn't changing. He wasn't changing because Babylon said this is what you need to do. And yet, God preserved his influence and preserved his life. Now, we saw something in Daniel 2 that was extraordinarily interesting in my mind. And you know, I struggled with this when I first started studying the Bible. I didn't think of the Bible as historically accurate. I thought it is God talking as it were today, except in an older day. But that's incorrect. The Bible is historically accurate. And you can go to an encyclopedia, and they, when you ask a question that's spiritual, will refer you to the Bible. Because the Bible is a history book. Well, I'm moving to a concept of God's people. I think this is so valuable and crucial to know. God has always taken care of His people. Now, you and I know some of that. We know the wilderness wanderings. We know Egyptian bondage and how we got out. And we understand some of that, but we don't, you leave there. And we're not certain what's going on. Well, Daniel 2, God prophesied through Daniel, the statesman now. He's in the king's living quarters. God prophesied 4 world powers. You can see in 38 he speaks of Babylon. 606 BC to 536. You can see in verse 39 that he speaks of Medo-Persia, who whipped Babylon. I'm giving you the dates, the best I can, closest I can give them. The Bible doesn't give the dates. 536 to 330. Then 39 is Alexander the Great, the Grecian. 330 to 303. And then the 4th power, verse 40, would be Rome. 330 to 30 AD, and then Jesus is born. How interesting. But look at verse 44. Needs to be in a different color, at least underlined. And in the days of these kings, the Roman kings, and in the days that Jesus came 30 to 33 AD. Oh. Shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed? And the kingdom shall not be left to other people, but it shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. Church is here, always will be. Always will be. As long as you have seed, you have the ability to have a plant. And as long as the seed, which is the Word of God, Luke 8:11, you will always have the ability to have a plant. And God will raise up a man or a woman that has a particular turning to wanting to know the Bible because it has already been historically saved. And they will go plant the seed in their mind, and they will take that all the way to reproducing what the seed produces, which is the church of our Lord Jesus Christ. How interesting. Well, what's Daniel 8? Daniel 8 is but a part of what we just said. And he's talking historically of the Medo-Persians and the Grecians. Well, Foy, how do you know that? I'll show you. It's right there in the text. It's not a matter of supposition. There are parts of Daniel's vision that could be lent to supposition. But there's most of it, no supposition. He explains it himself. Watch as we start. In the 3rd year of the reign of King Belshazzar, a vision. Now he gives us the date, 3rd year of King Belshazzar. We're in Babylon captivity. We learned that in Daniel 1. We're in captivity. It's under one of the last kings of Judah that we went into captivity. In the 3rd year of the reign of King Belshazzar, a vision appeared unto me, even unto me, Daniel. Daniel got a vision. This is Bible. Daniel got a vision. After that, which appeared unto me at the first. He's saying the date and the recipient. The recipient's Daniel, and he gives us the date. And I saw in a vision. He's going to tell us what he saw. And it came to pass when I saw that I was at Shushan in the palace. Oh, we already said that, didn't we? which is in the province of Elam. And I saw in a vision, and I was by the river Ulai. Okay, now you ready? Here's the vision. Now you got to work through this. Get your thinking cap on. Watch what he's seeing. He's telling you what he saw. Then I lifted up mine eyes and saw, and behold, there stood before the river a ram. I underlined that. I got to keep these characters in front of me. There's a ram, which had 2 horns. Well, now that's his vision. Well, what is the ram that has 2 horns? I can tell you, and you can know I told you the truth, if you'll read verse 20. The ram which thou sawest having 2 horns are the kings of Media and Persia. Oh, yeah, that's not speculation. That's studying the whole text. I know who it is. It's Medo-Persia. Well, when we looked at those 4 kingdoms that are in Daniel 2, we had Babylon, then we had Medo-Persia. Well, what is this? This is the history of God's people from 500 BC going all the way to 164 BC. Wow. And you know what it's going to say? And boy, here's the part I hope we hear. God's people are being oppressed. They're being overrun. But God has always looked after the little bit that remains faithful. And He's wanting to say to you and me, I haven't always promised you that life would be this good, relative to freedom, relative to all of that which you do. But I have promised you that if you will be faithful, I will look after you. Okay. Let's go on. The ram with 2 horns, and the 2 horns were high. Yeah, they were a world power. Medo-Persia whipped Babylon and took over the power. But one was higher than the other. Now this is interesting, because it started out the Medes were the stronger of the 2, but it ended up that the Persians under Cyrus the Great became more powerful than the Medes. But one was higher than the other, and the higher came up last. I saw the ram pushing westward and northward and southward, so that no beast might stand before him. World power. Neither was there any that could deliver out of his hand, but he did according to anything he wanted to do. You know. And became great. Now your translation may say magnified himself. We already saw he became great. So I'm thinking that translation's a shade better. Because generally when men go to a place of power, they become real impressed with themselves. And I'm thinking that that's what happened. And as I was considering, behold, an he-goat came from the west on the face of the whole earth. A he-goat. We got a ram and a he-goat. Well, now who's the he-goat? Well, it's not speculation again. Read verse 21. And the rough goat is the king of Greece. Oh, okay. And the great horn that is between his eyes is the first king. Well, who was the first king of Greece when they whipped Medo-Persia and became a world power? Alexander the Great. Okay, I'm able to deal with this. And touch not the ground. Now that means he came really fast. You know, he was running so fast he didn't even touch the ground. Figure of speech. And the goat had a notable horn between his eyes. That was Alexander. And he came to the ram that had 2 horns, which I had seen standing before the river, and ran unto him in the fury of his power. The he-goat, ran at the ram. And I saw him come close unto the ram, and he was moved with choler against him, and smote the ram. History tells us that it was Alexander that whipped the Medo-Persians. Well, I'll be. The Bible running historically through BC, before Christ, running about 500 BC, and break his two horns. And there was no power in the ram to stand before him. But he cast him down to the ground and stamped upon him. And there was none that could deliver the ram out of his hand. Therefore the he-goat waxed very great. Once again, I think maybe your translation says magnified himself exceedingly. You see, unless you compare yourself with God, there is a chance to think too much of yourself. But if you will always compare yourself with God, you'll never run the risk of losing humility, because you're always going to come in way under the bar. And when he was strong, the great horn was broken. Okay, that's Alexander. And for it came up 4 notable ones toward the 4 winds of heaven. Whenever Greece was to be taken over after Alexander was killed at like 33, I saw one commentator draw a parallel between he and Jesus. That's a bit much for me, except for 33. But I see that he was great, and then he was killed. Well, there were 4 notable of his people, his generals, that tried to ascend to the reigning power. Now, I wrote down their names because they're not common vernacular with me. And I see what they're setting forth. And Lysicamus was one, Cassander, Seleucus one, Nicanor, Ptolemy one, Soter. These are the 4 that tried, and they vied within themselves. But watch as he goes on. And out of one of them came forth a little horn. Now, if you read a lot of millennial stuff, you'll find the little horns about everything imaginable. But it isn't. It isn't. You got it in context. You know what the little horn is. I don't want you to flinch if somebody brings that up. I want you to say, no, I know what that is. It's Anticytus 4 Epiphanes. I know who the little horn is. And he was of the Seleucids, which was the 3rd of the 4 that I named. He was a Seleucid king. Okay, I see what we're talking about. And I read through this, and I can get close to that. And out of one of them came forth a little horn, which waxed exceedingly great toward the south and toward the east and toward the pleasant land. You know what the pleasant land is? That's the promised land. Oh, he liked to persecute Jews. Well, our brethren back there were Jews. And he liked to persecute Jews. And it waxed great, even to the host of heaven. He was great as a persecutor. And it cast down some of the host, even of the stars of the ground, and stomped upon them. Now, you'll find in Genesis 15:5 that people that belong to God or faithful to God are spoken of there as stars. Now, I didn't always, every time you read stars, that you can think of the faithful of God. But it can be sometimes you look at context to figure it out. He's talking about him persecuting the children of God. He's prophesying the children of God being persecuted. Think with me a minute. Why would God allow that to happen? There's a reason. There's a reason. Persecution will refine you. You see, you watch refining to get gold from the dross that's around it. They put a fire under it, and it melts the gold to separate it from the dross. The intent is to make you pure. Oh my. Now what do you feel about persecution? Now what do you feel about the fact that we aren't in control? That we don't have the big reputation? I've been a member of the Lord's church long enough to remember when we were described as the group from the other side of the track. Probably would have been a good idea to have stayed over there. We had a lot more interest in faithfulness than in bigness and flashiness. And so we worked to be pure more than we worked to look really good. And the look really good took from us some of our purity. We no longer emphasized really knowing the book. I read a story in a court setting that I thought just illustrated this. They came and they wanted to swear in the first one that was to testify, and somebody misplaced the Bible. And the judge says, "Is there a member of the Church of Christ here?" And he said, "Just put your hand on his head. That's as close to the Bible as we can get." Do we know the book like that anymore? Now you ask about you. You ask about you. Not the fellow sitting next to you. You ask about you. Do we know the book like that anymore? And then we look from there, and does our lives show the conviction that we believe that which we know? And you see what will happen as we move back to the other side of the tracks? Is if there's any such animal as half converted, we'll get rid of all them. Because it'll no longer be easy and popular to be a Christian. So it refines God's people. God, yeah, I mean, He certainly doesn't need me to say He knows what He's doing. But He knows what He's doing. And He's getting it back to the core kernel group that are really committed and dedicated to God. Well, I'll be. And it waxed great even to the host of heaven. It cast down some of the host and of the stars to the ground and stamped upon them. Yea, He magnified Himself even to the prince of the host, and by Him the daily sacrifice was taken away. You see, what He did was He not only persecuted the people that were God's people, but He profaned the temple to where they could not do the daily that was done in the temple. That's what daily, you'll see the word there in your Bible. The word sacrifice is in italics, which means it wasn't in the Hebrew. So it's the daily, everything that was done in the temple in a day was taken away, and the place of the sanctuary was cast down. It was of no significance because they couldn't do what was daily done. And an host was given him against the daily sacrifice by reason of transgression. And it cast down the truth to the ground, and it practiced and prospered. Threw the truth down, and the error prospered. What are you going to feel? Are you going to second guess your faith when the truth is thrown to the ground and error prospers? If you do, that is indicating today you're half converted, if half converted. I guess I need to get in the book. Then I heard one saint speaking, and another saint said unto that certain saint which spake, How long shall be the vision? Lord, how long are you going to let us? How long are you going to let us be mistreated like this? He gives them an answer. The answer is in verse 14. We'll read it the middle. But the answer is till the sanctuary is cleansed. The answer is till I get rid of the driftwood. Oh my. I guess I need to have my faith in a little bit more than going to church periodically and making a contribution occasionally. I better get on, dig deep, come to a relationship with Jesus. But you know, this how long question I find so interesting because I couldn't help but remember Revelation 6. I mean, and boy, it says it all. Now, it's a different persecution. This is a persecution of our brethren in Rome. Under Rome. Under Rome. Roman persecution. See, this is the next world power. So we got Medo-Persia, we got Greece, and then we will get Rome. Well, that's the book of Revelation. Look at Romans 6. So interesting. It's the fifth seal. You see 6? Look at 9. And when he'd opened the fifth seal, I saw under the altar the souls of them that were, what? Slain for the word of God and for the testimony which they held. You're dying for Jesus because you won't back down. And they cried with a loud voice, saying, How long, O Lord? How long can you allow us to be mistreated? How long can you... It begs asking, is my Christianity stout enough that I will be a part of the persecuted? Or can I compromise everything? But watch what the answer is. Holy and true, dost thou not judge and avenge our blood on them that dwell on the earth? How long, Lord, before you don't get them back for us? And white robes were given unto every... You know what he did? He said, here, have a white robe. Lord, I didn't ask for a white robe. I asked how long. He said, here, have a white robe. Oh. And it was said unto them that they should rest yet for a little season until their fellow servants also and their brethren that should be killed as they were should be fulfilled. Wait a minute, there's some more of you to die. Lord, that's not good news. He said, yeah, it is. When you understand life, that's good news. Because all you really are wanting to do is be faithful unto death, and then I'll give you the crown of life. So how long? Till you die. Oh, but Lord, somebody's going to kill me tomorrow. That's nothing. Thank them for it. Thank them for it. Thank them before they get it done for buying your ticket home. You see, you and I live in the life day. Way too much. We got to get out of the life days and get into the eternity days. And that helps our value system gain perception. Wow. I'm back in Daniel 8. I like 13. The saints are asking each other, how long shall the vision concerning the eliminating of the temple and the transgression of desolation to give both the sanctuary and the host to be trodden under foot? And he said unto me, until 2,300 days. That's 2,300 days. I divided that by 360, and that's 6 years, 140 days, but not 7. You see, 6 is the number of the devil. 666, you heard that. 7 is the number of God. What he's saying is it's going to be a long time, but it isn't going to be godly. It isn't going to win. Wow. And he's going to do all this till the sanctuary be cleansed. We're going to clean out all of those that are not committed. And then the interpretation of the dream begins in 15. Now you got, or the vision. You got the vision, 3 through 14. You've got the interpretation, 15 through the end of the chapter. And it came to pass when even I, Daniel, had seen the vision. I think Daniel got this vision. Some of the liberals like to say it wasn't Daniel. Daniel thought it was him. And sought for the meaning, Then behold, there stood before me as the appearance of a man. And I heard a man's voice between the banks of Uli. Now that's where he was, you saw in verse 2. Which called and said, Gabriel, where'd he come from? Make this man to understand the vision. Gabriel, help Daniel. Wow. So he came near where I stood. And when he came, I was afraid, scared me. And I fell on my face. But he said unto me, Understand, O son of man, for at the time of the end shall be the vision. Well, time of the end. A lot of liberals, every time they read time of the end or last days, go all the way to the destruction of the world. He's talking about the end of the persecution, not the end of the world. God has been working with His people all the way through BC, coming into AD. And then works with His people in AD, all the way till the earth and the works therein shall be burned up, 2 Peter 3:10. Now as he was speaking with me, I was in a deep sleep on my face toward the ground. Said, I'm still on the ground. I cannot believe the awesomeness of my God. But He touched me and set me upright. And He said, Behold, I will make thee know what shall be in the last end of the indignation. He's talking about His indignation, God's indignation. I'm going to let you know what's going to be the last end of my indignation. For at the time appointed the end shall be. The ram which thou sawest having two horns of the kings of Media and Persia. And the rough goat is the king of Greece. And the great horn that is between his eyes is the first king, Alexander. Now that being broken, whereas four stood up, I gave you their names, immaterial. 4 kingdoms shall stand up out of the nation. Now there's 4. They split into 4. But not in His power, not in God's power. They stood up on their own power. And in the latter time of the kingdom, when the transgressors are come to the full. Boy, that's worth underlining. God lets nations rise till their transgression is full, and then He smacks them with another nation. God's put together history. Do you see that? God has put together history, and God's still putting together history. God's still putting together history. I mean, it could be that we split up because of some internal decay. That's probably what's going to get us worse than external invasion. And we're decaying. We started killing each other for no reason at all. Your guilt is you went to the same school I went to. Oh, but that should have made us friends, I thought. At least allies, comrades. No. Well, but you don't even know me. I don't need to know you. I know you need to be dead. And here he goes. When the transgressors are come to the full, when our iniquity is full, God will whip us with who He chooses. It doesn't have to be a big nation. They don't have to have ballistic missiles. I know one guy that came with a slingshot and 5 smooth stones. We got whipped. God could use Cuba. They're too close for us to know what to do. We got ballistic missiles. They go way over them. We're not going to be able to fight them. They're too close. We need something that'll work. And in the latter times of their kingdom, when the transgressors are come to the full, a king of fierce countenance and understanding dark things, he's devious and crafty, shall stand up, and his power shall be mighty, but not by his own power. See, his power is mighty, But I'm going with him, God says. And he shall destroy wonderfully and shall prosper and practice and shall destroy the mighty and the holy people. And through his policy also he shall cause craft to prosper in his hand. And he shall magnify himself in his heart. That's what those people do. And by peace, promising peace, shall destroy many. He shall also stand up against the prince of princes. That's God. But he shall be broken without band. And the vision of the evening and the morning which was told is true. I underline that. Wherefore shut thou up the vision, for it shall be for many days. Look at that. Boy, that's helpful. Shut up the vision, because it's for many days. Well, this goes from 550 BC to 164, so this is 400 years. Shut up the vision. You know what that reminds me of? Book of Revelation. Gee, Kirkus, looky here. Turn to Revelation 1. Turn to Revelation 1, because this helps you a lot on things people are saying about the book of Revelation. Look at 1:1. 1:1, Revelation 1:1. He says things which must shortly come to pass. You see that? Don't let anybody take the book of Revelation. There are people that are preaching and got bigger numbers than we do, that the book of Revelation hadn't even started yet. Oh, well, the book says it must shortly come to pass. Over there, he said, seal it up when it's got 400 to 450 years. Here it's come, and then he says in verse 3, for the time is at hand. Do you see that? Now turn to chapter 22, lest somebody wants to divide the book in half and say, yeah, this went to here and there, but look at verse 6. It says, must shortly be done. You see it? The end of verse 6. Look at verse 10. For the time is at hand. You don't need to seal up the book of Revelation because it's present tense. But you seal up the vision that Daniel got because it's of long standing. Our brethren in persecution at Rome, AD 96. Give or take what you want. Time was then. The book of Revelation is fulfilled then. And Daniel is talking about 450 years out. So what he says there, shut thou up the vision, for it shall be for many days. And I, Daniel, fainted. Like that. And it made me sick. That's what he said. Daniel, why did it make you sick? It made me sick for certain days. Afterward I rose up and did the king's business. It made me sick because I knew my brethren were going to hurt. And that made me sick. But I thought about my illness, and then I got up and did the king's business, which was preach to the people in captivity at Babylon. And I knew that Medo-Persia was going to take Babylon and we'd still be in captive. And I knew that Alexander was going to whip Medo-Persia and we'd still be oppressed. And it made me sick to think of my brethren hurting. But I got up and did the Lord's business. And I was astonished at the vision. But none understood it but me. So my chore was to preach it. My chore was to preach it. Do we see God working through years that we thought He wasn't even talking about? Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, Rome. God working all the way through. I don't know how to say this, but I'll guarantee you that your God's way bigger than you think He is. And our God is way able to take care of what needs taken care of. World powers. Down to my little stuff that He acknowledges. What a flattering thing.
Amen.
Is it that God knows and loves you? You have never been flattered more largely than God knows and loves you. The God that rules over empires knows your name and wants you to understand how much He loves you. I don't know how to say it any better than I sincerely hope that your God has gotten bigger today. My God is mammoth. My God can. Can what, Foy? I don't want to qualify it one iota with anything more. Whatever it is, my God can. My God can save me, care for me, love me, look after me. And I'm not going to worry about the refining fire. Because when the fire begins to refine, I want to learn more purity until I gain the opportunity to go home. If you're subject to the invitation of Jesus, we ask you to come as we stand together and sing.